On Tuesday, November 4th, Republicans won a U.S. Senate seat, all of the congressional races, all of the constitutional offices, and larger majorities in the Arkansas legislature. It wasn't from a lack of effort on the Democrats' part, but the results still equate to a political earthquake in Arkansas. We've heard from Governor-elect Asa Hutchinson and Senator-elect Tom Cotton in recent weeks. Joining me now is Vince Insalaco, Democratic Party of Arkansas chairman. Welcome to the program. And I'm sorry I had to rehash all that for you there.
That's okay. Thanks, Roby. It's good to see you. Let me first wish everybody happy Thanksgiving this coming week.
All right. Well, happy Thanksgiving to you, too.
Yeah,
so
great time of year.
Let's talk about what happened from the results on November 4th. There was a lot of talk about how turnout was supposed to close the gap. There was internal Democratic polling showing that the races were close. I point out some Talk Business polling was quite the contrary there. What do you think? What do you think happened?
Well, several things. Obviously, when Tip O'Neill said all politics is local, it's no longer the case. I think that's probably a thing of the past. Is that people, folks went out and voted their national fears on a local level, and that clearly was the message that was sent. We did do a lot of good things, though. I mean, the minimum wage passed, got 65% of the vote. I was really excited about that. We got the voter ID off the ballot, which I thought was really good. As far as our polling is concerned, we did have those polls, and both of those polls certainly showed anywhere from 10 to 14 points undecided. And by all national, of course, I won't know this until the vote's certified, and the vote has not been certified yet. But by all of what we've been told nationally and what happened actually on election days, the undecided vote, 95% went to the Republicans. And if you just added the undecided vote to the numbers, actually the polls are pretty reflective.
Well,
of
I would point out,
happened.
in our polling, where we had Democrats 3 weeks before Election Day, they came in within a point or two of where they were, which indicates to me that all of the undecided votes, independent votes, maybe even some of the new voters that came in to the system tended to break
I think that's exactly
Republican.
What happened. I think that's exactly what happened, and I think that was based on a national message. It certainly wasn't based on anything that happened here in Arkansas. We had a wildly popular governor who had a very successful 8 years as governor, who did an enormous amount of work with education, the private option, and so forth, job creation. So, obviously that didn't transfer into votes, because people were thinking Washington, and you can pontificate it all you want to, but that's what it really comes down to. And I think, and I don't mean that just on the president either. I'm talking about the whole thing, the whole anti-incumbent. I think people are really concerned about a system that's broken in D.C.
Well, and then historically, a second-term president in the midterm election typically suffers some pretty big losses at the federal level,
and that's gone on for in my entire lifetime. Since Jimmy Carter. Ronald Reagan lost the biggest chunk of senators that were lost. It was in the second midterm election under the Reagan administration.
This also went down further, though. You saw much bigger gains in the state legislature than even Republicans expected to pick up with some of the seats that they did. We saw it even down at the local level on some county level races as well. When you look at how the state is kind of painted now in terms of red and blue, it looks to me like you have some pockets of urban, maybe slightly suburban Democratic support. You have some African American population centers across the state that are Democrat. And the white rural conservative vote is largely Republican this time around.
Well, I think we've learned that our base vote is 42%, which is what Mike Ross got statewide. In the second and fourth districts, our base vote was 44 to 45%. So that's really not as far from 50% as you might have it in other states in the South. So we're going to have to see what happens and if the next election makes that equation any different. I don't believe the people who voted against us. I think our core voters still believe in Social Security. They still believe in protecting Medicare. Obviously, 65% of the people voted for the minimum wage when we were the ones who worked so hard to get it on the ballot, and people like Congressman-elect French Hill voted against it. Tom Cotton was against it. They were all.
Tom Cotton said he voted for it.
Towards the end,
said he voted for it.
Towards the end, they did. But while the whole process was going on, they were not for it. certainly didn't help get it on the ballot. You know, all I'm trying to say is that I don't believe that the average person in Arkansas wants to see the private option go away. I don't think they want to kick 200,000.
Republicans would argue, particularly ultra-conservative Republicans, would say that they campaigned on shutting down the private option, and they were elected into office.
That's exactly right. And I hope that they realize that by doing that, they're taking 200,000 plus people off of health insurance. I don't know of a single hospital administrator in Arkansas that is against the private option. They have all seen their bottom lines come up because they're now getting paid for things they weren't getting paid for. And most importantly, the $100 million deficit in the budget that is created. You know, none of those things were discussed on the other side. And so, you know, it was constantly that against Washington. That was their entire message. And our message, we tried very, very hard to localize our message. We got outspent in a giant way. You know, and people heard the national message. They didn't hear the local message. I mean, that's what happened. I mean, you can say, I just don't believe in none of my polling, none of the things that I've seen that people are want public education funding cut. I don't believe that they want private vouchers in Harrisburg or, you know, in the rural parts of the state. I don't believe that they want their Medicaid or Medicare, privatized. I just don't believe that. Now, we'll find out if the Republicans do many of the things that they have promised to do. We'll just see how that works and how the folks in Arkansas respond to that.
Some folks have pontificated that the Democratic Party has been set back many election cycles with the results here. You don't go from having 64 Republican members in the House to a Democrat taking back a majority in one election cycle. It would be a very significant event would have to happen for that to happen.
Right.
How do Democrats reposition themselves? How do Democrats get back into the game at the state level with no federal office holders, no constitutional offices, and these big, large majorities in the House and in the Senate?
Well, it's going to take a lot of hard work. I think it's all about messaging. And, you know, the process, the biggest thing that I'm disappointed with, and I said this on election night, was the process. I mean, the amount of negative advertising, the amount of money, out-of-state money that was both sides, but the messages that were sent, the national message was so negative, and people got so tired of it early. And you know, the amounts of money that are spent by out-of-state interests who have no concerns for the folks here in Arkansas.
Again, on both sides of the aisle. There was plenty of money on both sides of the aisle.
I'm not going to sit here and agree that we had as much money in spending. For example,
I'm just saying there was still a lot of money from both sides.
Well, I'm talking about on the local races. You're talking about on the national races, the statewide races. I'm talking about on the state representative races. We got outspent by huge amounts of money. And when, you know, we're doing mailers and that sort of thing for state representative campaigns, and we put 3 pieces out and the other side put out 12 pieces. I mean, it's just, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. And most of that money came from out-of-state funds. And it was about messaging that really had nothing to do with local politics, local concerns.
I believe that the coalition that has carried the Democrats for generations of white rural conservatives, African Americans, progressive urban suburbanites, I feel like that coalition is broken at this point in time. Can you put it back together?
Well, we're going to have to see. I mean, I think it's probably going to become more refocused on, you know, when you talk about the rural vote, is, you know, talking to women and talking to men the same message. You know, I think we're going to just have to see how that breaks out. I don't think African Americans and progressive urbanites, as you called them, I don't think they've fallen away from the party. I mean, we 42 to 44% of the vote.
It's the conservative vote.
Sure, it is the conservative vote, and I think we have to learn how to re-message and talk to those folks about their local concerns. I mean, you know, I don't believe, for example, do mothers in rural Arkansas, would they rather have their children in pre-K? I think they do. And now, of course, they're not only talking about cutting pre-K, not expanding it, but they're talking about cutting it. So I think that we're going to have to reach them on issues that affect them personally, and we're just going to have to determine how we're going to do that. But the whole national atmosphere is somehow got to change.
I got about 30 seconds to take us home here. You going to stay on as chairman of the Democratic Party?
I'm still thinking about it. I haven't made a final
Will it be
decision
your decision
yet.
to make? The state committee.
Well, the state committee, of course, has got elected chairman in February, and and first they need to know if I'm going to run again, and then I haven't made that decision
in
yet.
February. Okay, so we got till then.
Right.
All right, last question for you. How does Hillary Clinton change the equation in 2016, or can she?
Well, first of all, again, that's an entirely different point, because Mrs. Clinton will be looked at differently in Arkansas than she will be looked at in other southern states because of her local connection. I think the other side will try to do the whole negative thing. It's already starting. You hear it constantly. But, what we have to decide is how does that, voters have to decide in Arkansas, how's that going to play here? I mean, she was the first lady of our state for 10 years, longer. She was the Secretary of State. She was a U.S. Senator. She influenced tens and tens of thousands of Arkansans, and particularly women in Arkansas, who I just think are waiting to help her and support her. Is it enough? I don't know. We'll just have to see how that plays out.
All right. Vince Insalaco, chairman of the Democratic Party of Arkansas. Appreciate you.
It's good to see you.
My friend, and look, I wore all blue for you.
Thank you.
Today, too.
That's right.
And
Thank
I'm
you
wearing
very
black,
much.
too,
That's
because
right.
black
That's
and
great.
blue is a little bit of what happened to you on election night there.
Good man.
All right.
Thanks.
All right. We are back to wrap up right after this.